Okay, guys, we did it again. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We're going to add my friend Drew Rosener in a minute, who's an awesome domainer. I'm going to give it 1 second to allow a few people to join first. I'd like to distinguish what Drew does from what I does, just so people understand that he does own a fabulous collection of domains, but he's primarily a broker, which means you can work with him and he knows everybody. He buys and sells domains. All I do is sell my own domains. So I'm not as visible and I don't know as many people. He knows all the top CEOs and executives to buy and sell domains from. So even though we pretend we're competitors, we're not really. He's a super smart guy and he can speak for himself this very moment. So I'm going to add Drew and we're going to roll. What's up, my man?
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
It's all good, man. Boca, you can't beat it.
Well, I'm in Portugal, and I have to say that I've been to Boca a lot, and I like Portugal better. But nonetheless, not a bad spot. I think both of us are in good spots.
I've never been to Portugal, so I'll take your word for it since I know we like a lot of the same places. You can tell our audience, the last time I saw you, if you recall, was like at one of my favorite spots in the world. Do you remember where?
I do. It was a little Indian restaurant in, I don't know if it was Santa Monica or Venice, but one or the other. And down the street from where I was actually, I had just made the dire mistake of buying a house and, we thought we were going to move to Venice Beach, and then, very quickly came to the realization that was just not the right spot for us. Although I absolutely love that area. I love Santa Monica. I love Venice. Yeah. I just can't live there. For a variety of reasons. But anyways, it was the last time I saw you. It was a great time. You bought me lunch.
I left Santa Monica too. Actually, the place across the street is the vegan Indian place. We ate at a place called Thai Vegan, which is...
Oh, you're right. It was Thai. You're right. Thai.
That's my favorite neighborhood, period. I love it there, but I moved away. We moved away also just for a variety of reasons. But in any case, so...
The question is, did you fly or drive?
I'm trying to think back. I had a car, so I drove. I hardly ever fly. I guess you realize.
You don't fly, right? Yeah.
I do. That was my. I fly once in a blue moon when I have to, but I avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's not fun anymore.
Especially now. I don't think I would ever do it. I couldn't even imagine doing it now. But I've been ever since 9/11. I hardly ever did it.
I flew to Germany, and it was actually, just like a couple months ago, and it was actually a trip. I have to say, I had tremendous anxiety. I was not excited about getting on a plane and flying during a global pandemic. But it actually turned out to be like a real trip, in the obscure meaning of that word. There was nobody on the plane. I had the entire business class to myself. Like, it was me and my family. We were literally the only people in the business class. In the back of the plane had maybe 10 people in it on, probably a 180, 250 passenger plane. And, it was easy peasy. We arrived in Munich and it was literally a ghost town. There was nobody, completely empty.
Nice.
But that's what your audience wants to talk about.
I want to talk about Portugal for 1 second. And, and I also want to go to your background after that. With respect to Portugal, I have this really cool house on the beach in Delaware, and I have a photograph at the identical latitude pointing eastward, which is a picture of this really cool town in Portugal, which is straight across the Atlantic Ocean from my house.
Yeah, because I'm in Lisbon, and I believe I line up with New York or DC.
Yeah, you're due east of Dewey Beach, Delaware. So
yeah.
Exactly. So I want to, before we talk about domains for a minute, first I like to do people's family background and their business background, and then sort of their travels, when your case is extensive, so you can make it brief, and then we'll do domains.
Okay.
So, thank you, sir.
What do you want to know? So, all right. Well, I'm from Rhode Island. So I'm an East Coast guy, New England. I'm not sure what you want to know about family, but if you want me to go way back, I'm actually 13th generation from Roger Williams, who was the founder of Rhode Island. So I actually am, I'm founding father material. And funny enough, which I think is quite relevant to these times, and I think like you, I didn't necessarily support either side of this election, but the reason for that is that I really, I've studied history pretty extensively, particularly American history and my family history, and yeah, I don't know, I don't want to go down the politics rabbit hole, but I've recently been doing a lot more reading, around that subject, and Rhode Island was the first place on planet Earth ever in human history that allowed a religious freedom, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So, anyways, little tidbit of information: Rhode Island born, Rhode Island bred, 13th generations of Rhode Islanders. I'm the first one to escape Rhode Island from my family, I believe, and
Well, so you're not Jewish.
Well, my mother is Jewish. My father's Jewish, and my mother, yeah, my father's Jewish. Born, raised Jewish. Both his parents were Jewish.
They're all from Rhode Island, though. They're all from that little dot of Rhode Island.
Well, on my father's side. So on my mother's side, it's the Rhode Island, real, as deep roots as it possibly gets. We were burning the Gatsby and partaking in the Boston Tea Party. But on my father's side, it was Hungarian and German Jewish immigrants who left Europe prior to the war, 1912, I believe, and wound up in New York. Pretty interesting story there, actually, too. My great grandfather was a guy named Benjamin Block, who let's see if I can see that horse. You see that horse up there? That's Benjamin Block.
Yeah, he invented blockchain, right?
Yeah, exactly. He did. He was on the board of the New York Stock Exchange at the time. During the Great Crash of '29. And he was one of the very few on the board that didn't kill themselves. Lucky for me, or I wouldn't be sitting here. So, when that whole crash went down, they all killed themselves. But he also had that horse, Morvich, which turned out to be a Kentucky Derby winner. So I guess that's probably the most interesting parts of my family history. Everything else after that, after the crash, they lost everything. They went from, driving my great grandmother to school in a Rolls Royce every day, and they had their residence at the Ritz-Carlton in New York, to moving to some, backwoods town in New Jersey, and subsequently later to Rhode Island a couple generations later. So, that's it. And then I studied abroad in Australia, where I met my wife, who's German. And then that sort of started my global escapade of becoming an immigrant. And I left the U.S. in 2008. I moved to Panama for 10 years. From Panama, I moved to very briefly and to Los Angeles, and then quickly pulled the parachute. And 2 years ago, moved to Portugal.
One of the interesting things is, just by accident, almost all my guests are internationalized. They've all lived all over, and a lot of them speak different languages, and multicultural marriages and kids and stuff. I didn't do it on purpose. It's just when we talk to everybody and they start talking about their background, it's like they've had military families, or just for whatever reason, they all seem to be very internationalized. Myself, I'm very American, I think. I don't travel international very often. Or ever.
I think there's two insights there. So one is, I think, I think you have more personal reasons why you don't do a lot of traveling. And then I think that our industry, which, most of your, at least half of the guests you're bringing on are from within the industry. And our industry lends itself to that lifestyle, right? It's something that can be done from anywhere. It can be sold in any currency. It can be sold to any country. And so, it's one of these few industries that, now today there's more, but particularly, at the early days of this business, it was one of the few businesses you could do anywhere. It was one of the original portable trades. And so, I think it lends itself to people that are interested. I mean, that was, let's see if I have the book here. One of the, here. So back 2002-ish, I read this book. I actually stole this from my old boss. And, I was reading through, and this is like, historically speaking, portable trades, things that you could build a skill set in, build a mastering or an expertise in, and then do it from anywhere, not be beholden to any geographical location. It was the original sort of geographical arbitrage. And that, for whatever reason, it spoke to me. And I was searching for, my portable trade since then. And I had already been sort of dabbling in domains. I just didn't know it was an industry. And at that time, I was in the seafood business. I was trading seafood commodities internationally, and which also allowed me to do quite a bit of trade and travel. And I've read that one too. I think I've got. Let's see, must have that here somewhere.
Well, it teaches a method where you can work online, basically, which isn't far apart.
Somewhere. I've got it. I don't know. It's not here on my shelf, but I've got it somewhere.
I'll take your word for it. As long as you know the methods, it's.
I was in the auction with you. I was the second high bidder for MakeMillions.com. I loved that domain, and the moment I lost it, I regretted it. I was like, man, what were you doing? You were sleeping. You pay what you got to pay to get that name.
Well,
I'm glad you got it, and you made very good use of it, and you hopefully have helped educate thousands of people to improve their lives.
I don't remember the price, but I rarely.
It wasn't expensive. It was a couple $1,000s.
Right. But in any event, I rarely overbid. But in that case, I needed it to name my book. So like buying domainmarket.com, the domain of my company, buying Buy Domains, my previous, I pay what I have to pay to get the perfect brand, which is what everybody else should be doing.
Hold on, let's see. I think it was 2000. That was 2009. Yeah, 2009. It was me and you bidding at the end. Great domain, MakeMillions.com. Great domain.
So tell me, tell the audience again. I have Jeff on in a little while. So just tell the audience about what you do for a living, how they reach you, and then how they can make money buying and selling domain names.
So, we should do this again in about a month. We're going to have some really, really exciting stuff coming out that I'll be able to talk about. Unfortunately, I just can't yet. But it will be, we're going to democratize the domain investment opportunity. And so I think a lot of what we're going to say is going to be a lot more relevant to folks. But, look, I think domain names are a proxy for physical real estate, for commercial real estate. I think that, in today's world, you've got 30% of business commerce happening in the digital world and 70% still in brick and mortar. And over the next 5 years, that flips to 70% digital, 30% brick and mortar. And as that happens, a lot of the value creation accrues to the underlying assets in the same way that it accrued to the commercial real estate that is now being dislocated. And that value will accrue to the digital real estate that underpins the digital economy. And so I'm very excited and optimistic about the future. And my business is to help, the top businesses in the world acquire their best version brandmatch.com domain name. And, at the end of the day, I'd say we're agnostic. I mean, we're not going to tell our customers they can't buy something that they want to buy, but we are definitely, 99% .com. And we also, in addition to helping businesses acquire their domain and helping them with the naming process and the domain selection process, and we also help people that own domains or companies that own domains that are sort of sitting on their balance sheet unused to sell them and put them in the hands of those parties that can make a highest and best use case of them. And we help both sides, understand the value and, do the education component and, make a market. I mean, ultimately, I like to say that our job is to bring liquidity to an illiquid market. And so, as you alluded to, early on, you and I like to poke each other and make some fun on social media, but we don't really directly compete. Sometimes we're competing on an auction or two. But your business is buying very large volumes of undervalued domain names, and more, let's say, mechanically or systematically selling them at scale. And my job is more, I'm out there with a sniper rifle. We do buy domains for our own account. We have portfolio of, I don't know, maybe 5,000 domains. But it's all very high value and it's all, one-off. It's more, it's just a different animal. And so, like you said, our primary business is the brokerage side. It's helping people to buy or sell the world's best domain names. And we really only deal in the top, I like to say the top 2% of domain names. So we're not dealing with a lot of, sort of longer tail, smaller names. It's mostly bang on big one-word.coms, meaningful commercial two-word.coms, three-letter, two-letter, acronyms, stuff of that nature.
What are the best ones that you own yourself that you're trying to sell?
Well, funny enough, opposite to you, we're actually not trying to sell our domains. I don't really, I have a little bit of a different perspective on the domain market. I don't actually want to sell. Well, that's not true. From the 5,000 names, let's say the top 1,000 names that we own, I don't want to sell them. I would like to monetize them. I would like to do something other than sell them. Because once you sell these things, you cannot get them back. There is no replacement. Each one is unique, like a snowflake. And so I don't really want to sell them. I would like to, and this is also very much related to some of the news that we're going to have, about a month from now. But, we want to find ways to get these into the hands of the best parties that can make use of them and come along for the upside in some way or another.
What are the best ones, bro?
All right, so our best names that we own, clear.com, EEM.com, two-letter.com, these things are always very subjective. You have
a collection, you have like a weed collection too, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we have a pretty sick collection of weed domains. I think my favorite
all the best ones. All the best ones.
Pretty much all the best ones. The only ones
you should post the list if you feel like promoting it because it's so good. I mean, it's like all the very best names in that space.
Yeah. And we sold some of them, and we had nugs.com. We had
well, I don't know. I know who you sold that to. You sold that to Mike.
And MJ.com, and we had. I don't know. I mean, we still have strains.com, cultivation.com. We still have, sourdiesel.com, bluedream.com. We've still got, I don't know. I don't even know. We've got about 1,000 names in that space that are, the best names there are.
I need to ask you about one other subject.
We got this one too. We got swag.com.
Nice. Very good. Listen, I want to ask you about one other subject and then anything you want to conclude with, and then I'm going to put Jeff on. So the final subject is tell me about Mike Saylor and voice.com, but also tell me about if phone.com did not have a corporation on top of it, what would it be worth?
Okay. All right. So, you know, I'm not only interested just in domains. I'm also very, very, very interested in Bitcoin. You and I should have another one of these and debate Bitcoin. But I'm a big fan. I'm a diehard believer. I do believe that the internet deserves its own native digital currency. I do believe that cryptography is the greatest path to human freedom, and I do believe that Bitcoin is the bridge of those two things. So. I was aware of Mike Saylor. Actually, I was aware of Mike Saylor, in the early net days. I remember, when he was a high flying, .com CEO, and MicroStrategy was, a hot name on the street. But in more recent years, he came back on the radar after selling Voice.com, $30 million. Set the benchmark for public sales. There are domain sales well in excess of that, but not publicly, recognized. And so that was a big deal. I think as he said, he sort of put a peg in the wall for where the market is on big names like that. If you can find the right end user at the right time and the stars align. And, on the back of that sale a year later, the guy went out and bought $450 million in Bitcoin. He's up almost 40% or something in the last 4 months since he made that announcement. Stock's up 100%. So he's flying high. He's we had a really interesting 2-hour conversation with him on Domain Sherpa on the program that I own, and just fascinating guy. He understands the digital realm. He understands domain names. He understands the value proposition. He understands that we're only scratching the surface in terms of, the utility of the DNS mechanism and the utility of the domain name network and what these things are going to represent in the future, from, your identity to your wallet to, connectivity with the Internet of Things and all of the things that are in it, from a control standpoint, from a location standpoint. There's all kinds of exciting stuff that's coming down the line, utilizing domain names and DNS. And so, as you expand utility, you expand value. And so one of the reasons I wanted to get on the show is it's very hard to explain to people what the value proposition of a domain name is. And he is very elegant and eloquent in his explanation. And so I encourage people to go watch that. Go, domainsherpa.com. You'll see it right away. There's a video from Mike. Hold on, sorry. Yeah, we'll add a link.
Add a link on the thread. So you tell me about phone.com, and then I'm going to add Jeff. Okay,
so phone.com. Here's the thing. My valuation methodology is very data driven. So I'm going to just plug it into a couple of tools here that aren't going to tell me what the domain is worth, but they're going to give me the data points I need in order to decide what the name is worth.
What I really want to know is if you owned it and there was no corporation. Again, there's an incredibly great corporation on top of that domain, but I'm trying to separate the value of the corporation from the domain. But again, just pretend you own it and somebody's negotiating with you. What's your breaking price?
Yeah. So again, I am very data driven on my valuation. So just quickly looking here, there's about 700,000 exact match searches per month. You've got $1.25 CPC, roughly speaking. Extrapolate that out, give it it's a super premium name, give it like a 5-year business multiple. I think the name is worth, and again, I hate to even say what is the name worth, because if I tell you what I think the name is worth,
I want you to keep in mind,
people are going to think I'm nuts.
No, it's okay. But Voice.com deal could be a conceptual comp, and you're a very tough negotiator. So you and I both go high. So.
Yeah. So I think, at the low end, you're talking about $5 million. And I think at the high end, again, like you said, you're talking about something like a Voice.com. But I think 5 million is probably
30 million. That's a pretty big range.
Big gap, right? So if we look at,
I think it's worth 30 million, but if I was selling it, I would take 20 just based on discounting it off of the Michael Saylor voice.com deal. But tell me whatever else you want to conclude with so I can add Jeff.
Yeah, just to add a little bit of color onto my valuation, just why there's such a big gap, because I don't want that. I'm not trying to weasel out by giving this huge gap, but it's, 5 million, I think, is like the price where it would be tradable. If you came to me and said, look, there's no corporation on top of this thing, I want it to be sold. I think that we could go to market and sell it in the 5 million range. So I think, the value in the market today, $5-10 million. I think that what is the actual value of that name? I think it's, it's at least $20 to $30 million. The market and the value and the price, people conflate these two things. They're very different.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And domain names are at a very early stage of the maturity cycle. And so the value and the price have an enormous delta. But going forward, if we look forward a decade from now, the value will probably be about halfway up the maturation scale, and will be, whereas that name is tradable in the market maybe at 5 million today, it'll be tradable in the market at 15 or 20 million dollars, and then and the value will be 50 million, call it.
Okay. Listen, we're going to do domain appraisals after I'm done with Jeff. So if you come back on, I'll add you back on. And you can think about the value of SEO.com, which is another fabulous corporation. But I'm just curious what the value of the domain is without the corporation. So thank you so much. This is an awesome time. And I'm going to add you back when you have your big announcement in a month or so. And I appreciate it. Hope you have safe travels with your family, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing.
I'm not going anywhere, but I appreciate it. And thank you, Mike. Pleasure to chat with you.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Take care. Jeff, how are you today?
Good, Mike. How you doing?
Sorry we're so late. Just Drew had so much good information at the end there. I didn't want to cut him off. I actually tried to cut him off, but that never works anyways.
It's okay. I'm not late for the office because I'm at the office, so it's all good.
Yeah, good news about quarantine is it's easy to get to the office.
Yeah, I tell you. I mean, I already worked at home sometimes, but commuting is almost non-existent now for me anyway.
So you have a guitar on your wall. I like that. So we're going to get into a few things, but the first question I have for you that I'm dying to know is, what's the connection between Anderson Cooper and Gene Simmons?
Yeah, the only connection is that Anderson is not a closet musician. Well, maybe he is a closet musician, but when I used to work in marketing for Borders before they went bankrupt, I was on their national marketing team, and I was fortunate enough to do all kinds of events and promotions with this wide swath of people, talent-wise, not just musicians but authors, and so I did a handful of events with Anderson Cooper shortly after Katrina down in New Orleans. But the only connection is that I happen to do stuff with both of them. No.
You're the connection. You connect.
I'm the connection. Yes.
So what I want to do, if you don't mind, is we'll go to your family background and your business background, and then we'll go to today, to what's going on today.
Sure. Absolutely. And you just want me to jump in? Okay, well, great. So my family background, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and like you, right? Yeah. And it was a great area to grow up in. I think we realized certain things way in hindsight, the fortunate things that were in our life. But I loved growing up in that area. I mean, by my teens, I was taking the subway from the suburbs into downtown to go to 4th of July celebrations and museums, and what a great place to grow up from a cultural perspective and a sports perspective. And whether or not you like politics, you could never escape that. The Beltway kind of sucked, but I grew up in that area. I went to school in South Central PA after high school at actually a couple of different colleges, because I was playing in bands all the time. So I was always dropping out to go on some wildly unsuccessful tour. But I graduated with a degree in the early 90s in mass communications, film and TV production specifically. And I had always been the main songwriter in my bands. But I have a sister who lives in Miami, and 2 parents who are in Delray Beach, Florida. So we've all kind of abandoned the DC area. And
Come visit next time you're in Delray. That's my stomping ground.
that'd be great. I would love that. I would love that. It's a great town. What a fun place. It's amazing what that place has become culturally and entertainment wise. My folks live in Pineapple Grove. I don't see them very much right now, except on Zoom and across the parking lot with Max.
That's where I park. That's free parking in that neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the few places, right?
And there's actually a drum circle right there. If you come on Wednesday, you can do the drum circle with me.
I love drum circles. I used to go. There's a couple in the Delray area, and I'm down in Hollywood, and there's one that meets in the downtown circle, Young's Art Park.
In Hollywood?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll have to come down there sometime. But the one in Delray is very convenient because I'm already parked like a block away, and I have my drum in my car.
Of course, absolutely. Convenience is important, and Delray has everything you could possibly want. Why ever leave?
Yeah, what's cool is my grandparents used to live there a long time ago. So with respect to the changes that you mentioned, I've been like watching all the changes from, decade to decade, basically.
Yeah, I imagine, especially the last 10 to 12 years, the explosion has happened. And the average age, I read a graphic a year or two ago, the demographic in Delray, 10 or 12 years ago, the average age was 60, and now it's 37. And so, pretty amazing. Opposite of a lot of Florida, I would imagine.
Yeah, and they opened a ton of really good restaurants recently. The music scene is kind of marginal, but it's manageable. But it's fun. But the restaurant scene is very nice, and of course, there's a beach there, so it's an awesome.
It's great overall. I feel like the live music scene in a place like that lags behind how cool most of the rest of it is. Like it could definitely be better and be like a mini Nashville or a mini New Orleans or something like that, which would be nice. But Johnny Brown's is a lot of fun. So after college in Pennsylvania, all my folks family had already moved away from DC, and a friend of mine said, "You've always thought you're a pretty good songwriter. Why don't you move to Nashville?" And I was like, "Well, I don't like country music that much, but let me check it out." I went to visit on a weekend a few weeks later. I fell in love with it. I didn't know a soul, and I vowed that I was going to move there. I went back home to DC, saved up for 3 months, and moved down. And as a birthday gift to myself in my mid-20s, I moved down there for 18 years and worked in many different facets of the music and broader entertainment industry. And as a songwriter, I was always doing that on the side. And I loved Nashville. I loved it. I started dabbling in nonprofit management towards the end of my time there. And that's what brought me down to South Florida. I had done a lot of volunteer work, and I loved animals. And I got an opportunity to be the director in South Florida of the largest no-kill private dog rescue east of the Mississippi. And my folks were already down here, and the beach was here. So it was time for a change. That was 5.5 or so years ago. And been down here working in nonprofit management as my day gig ever since.
Well, back to Nashville for 1 second here. Tell us about, just for a few minutes, some of the famous people you met, and if you have a story. And just for the record, my first major concert was Kiss at the Capitol Center in DC, of course. I don't know, you were probably at the same show. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned Kiss. Gosh, the best marketers in rock and roll, bar none, no doubt. I mean, the best merchandisers and marketers in rock and roll. I was working in marketing for Borders at the time. We had a regional marketing team, a national marketing team, and I was based in downtown Nashville. And Kiss was on tour with Aerosmith. This was around 2007 or 8, towards the end of my time there. I was there about 10 years. And during my time with Borders, I was fortunate enough to meet just crazy cross-section of interesting people, authors and musicians and politicians and everything in between. Some people checked all those boxes. Actually, at the time, I was a bigger fan of Aerosmith, and I was in the coffee shop one day when they were in town together on this joint bill. And in Nashville is one of those towns where you get used to seeing all kinds of famous people, and especially in jobs like that. So you kind of ease off your wow factor a little bit. But we all have folks that we're really interested in and really fans of, and Steven Tyler and Aerosmith were one of them. And one day he walked by the coffee shop, and I did a double take and then a triple take. And there was this guy who was about a half inch shorter than me, which made me feel really good, with the long hair and the big lips. And it was Steven Tyler. And so of course I went out to stare. And a couple folks beat me to it, and we talked for a minute or two. But that night, not coincidentally, actually, we had a book signing scheduled with Gene Simmons from Kiss, because he had put out a new book at the time. I think it was called Sex, Money, and Kiss or something like that. It was sort of his version of a professional development and life development book, Gene Simmons style. And so he was on the tour with Kiss and Aerosmith. He was stopping in certain cities to do book signings and meet and greets. And we were fortunate enough to be doing an event with him that night, which was doing a bookstore event with someone of that stature is kind of like trying to fill a fishbowl with a barracuda. I mean, it's, you know, that even if the attendance is not what you hope, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of people trying to come into your bookstore and fit into this space. And Gene Simmons was one of those guys. And, you know, this is a guy who had lunch boxes and condoms and toilet paper, all this stuff branded after him. So we were excited for that night. And he showed up that night a little early. And, you know, we had these event teams that kind of had a process for how we were going to handle big out of the box events. And, you know, we would usually get together with the big author or the big musician and say, hey, you know, we're excited you're here and this is how it's going to work. And, you know, this is how we're going to manage 1,000 people trying to come through in the next few hours. But it was the opposite with Gene. He came in and we met with him backstage, so to speak. And instantly he started telling us how it was going to go, instead of us telling him. And it was okay. You know, we're used to that a little bit here and there as well. And again, this is Gene Simmons. And I was so excited to take a picture with him backstage, so to speak, before we went out. We took a picture and I thought we were both going to stick out our tongues because, you know, he's famous for his tongue. But he faked me out. I was the only one that stuck my tongue out. Somewhere there's a picture of that. But for 5.5 hours, 6 hours, we had probably 1,400, 1,600 people come through that night. And a lot of them had bought his book, which is kind of, most of them had, because that was kind of the price of admission, but they were bringing all kinds of other things for him to sign. And some of them brought body parts for him to sign and I don't mean brought them in a suitcase. I mean, they were just part of their bodies for them to sign. That was always interesting. They were the females. He signed anything and everything. And at one point, about 2 hours in, the local NBC affiliate stopped in because part of my job was to reach out and talk with the media about certain things and especially exciting events. And NBC came down, and much to both our horror and pleasure, he got on live TV with NBC and told anybody who was watching or listening to come down. He'd stay all night if he needed to. And so again, you can't buy advertising like that. So we were thrilled, but also at some point we wanted to go home, so we were terrified at the same time. But people came. We had probably 6 hours worth of people in line that night. The only thing that I think made him leave was I think he had to go to a concert to play in. It was a crazy time. It was a lot of
where he was performing, like not go to one, but perform one.
He was playing. Yeah.
I just said that he was born as Chaim Witz in Haifa,
in Israel, right? I think they emigrated here when he was 9 or 10 years old or something like that.
If you ever run into him again, call him Chaim.
Chaim, yeah. No, and I watched that show. Chaim. Yeah, he was a character. He was a character. You know, all kinds of folks. I mean, I've met Bryan Adams and Anderson Cooper and Dr. Ruth and
Cool.
And Mitch Albom was a thrill. I love his books. Just all kinds of interesting people over the years. Awesome. Rascal Flatts, a lot of country folks. Keith Urban, Tim McGraw.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
It's okay.
I'm teasing. You know, I'm a rock and roller. I don't have anything against country music people. I just don't want to hear their music.
Yeah, I hear you. Although it's interesting, having lived in Nashville for so many years, there was a real fine line between a lot of rock and a lot of country. Yeah. It really was, you know, I mean, and long before I moved to Nashville, the Eagles were putting the two together like, you know, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Garcia and Bob Dylan and like Neil Young, it's got a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, even Ray Charles was always dabbling together and throwing all that stuff together, you know?
It's like folk music and bluegrass ties back into country. It's all tied together, obviously.
Yeah, they're all
really cool. So Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say they're all cousins. Blues and rock and folk and country, they're all kissing cousins, and I like where they blur. I like where those lines blur. It's kind
Yeah,
of
you
fun.
got James Brown and Elvis Presley getting people started way back when.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jefferson Airplane, everybody. So tell me about how cool Face the Music Foundation is, what you guys are doing, how the viewers can get involved with you and reach you, and what's the value add here?
Yeah, Face the Music Foundation is a nonprofit 501c3. We were founded about 5 years ago by some guys who really believed, as do I, that music is not just this fun, entertaining thing, but it can be a mechanism and a catalyst to change the world. It's a universal communication tool. It's been proven through science time and time again that music helps retention when it comes to learning new information or trying to change behaviors. And so when it was put together as a nonprofit, it really was born out of the need to try to raise awareness and reduce stigma surrounding specifically addiction and more broadly mental health, and to raise funds to provide treatment scholarships for people who couldn't afford or didn't have good quality insurance for treatment. My predecessor actually decided pretty early on in the organization's history that if we're really going to be a respected organization in this conversation in the community, that we really should also have some community outreach programs that attacks the problem from other angles besides just trying to fund treatment. And what I mean by that is, addiction and mental health are very multifaceted, nuanced epidemics, just like a lot of social ills, and you can't cure them or fix them from just one angle. So prevention and education with almost any societal ill is a huge piece to eventually fixing it. When I used to work in animal welfare and animal rescue, we used to say as rescuers, we're never going to rescue ourselves out of this problem just by opening more shelters and more rescue organizations. We have to change the conversation so that spay and neuter become the norm in our world rather than just the exception. And it worked. So in about 20 years ago in the animal rescue community in this country, we were euthanizing 20 million dogs and cats a year. And by a year or two ago, we were only euthanizing maybe 2 to 2.5 million. Still a bad problem, but it's easy to see where the arc is there. The arc is that problem is well on its way to being solved as a societal ill. Well, addiction and mental illness are much earlier in their trajectory towards society changing the conversation. And so prevention and education is a really big part of that now. And to dive a little deeper, we have to be able to, as a country, a society, have conversations about the fact that my brother or my sister or my aunt needs to get help without feeling any worse about discussing that around the dinner table than we would about saying my brother or my sister or my friend has cancer. And until that is the norm and that stigma is gone, we face a challenge. Now we also have a community outreach program called Get in Tune, which works with at-risk youth from a prevention standpoint, and it utilizes what I would call music-assisted therapy to tackle difficult emotional topics for marginalized youth: bullying, self-esteem, personal boundaries, self-advocacy, empathy for the other, whomever that is. And these are curriculum-based programs facilitated by licensed therapists, but we use music as the gateway to have these tough discussions. We have modalities. We have something called lyric analysis, where we analyze songs that are based on certain topic matter along with the kids to help talk about those difficult topics. And it opens people up. It reduces the barriers, the resistance to conversation. We do collaborative songwriting with these kids also around the difficult topic matter. Now we have a program also we consider outreach called Grace Notes Project, and that utilizes musicians who are in recovery. And for those people out there who are not familiar with the phrase recovery really means, it's folks who have gone through treatment for some sort of addiction or alcoholism and are now clean and working some sort of a program to stay clean. That means meetings at NA or AA, going to therapy, doing community service, maybe working a job, hopefully. And so we take musicians who are in recovery and utilize their God-given talent and passion for performance and put them back out in the community as what I would call musical warriors or musical ambassadors, performing for other marginalized populations, senior citizens with dementia, kids with autism, soldiers with PTSD. Eventually, we'd like to expand into the prisons and have a program called Guitars Behind Bars. And now you have a musician using this performance as part of their regimen for staying clean, healthy, and sober, but also providing not just entertainment value, but the real and proven science-based benefits of live music performance for these other populations. So those are kind of the bookends in addition that we provide in the community. In addition to, yes, we still put on benefit concerts and advocacy events to raise awareness and raise funds, of course, for treatment scholarships and sober living scholarships as able. Now, COVID-19, of course, stopped a lot of these programs and events virtually in their tracks. Although 3 or 4 months in, we were able to start pivoting into the virtual world a little bit. And so we're available to be seen online at facethemusic.org. We do some front porch sessions streamed as part of our Grace Notes project, occasionally on Wednesday nights on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Facebook.com/Face the Music Foundation. That's a little bit about Face the Music. I'm their executive director, been there about 1.5 years. And, we have a great board. We're always looking for new board members who are ready to roll up their sleeves because we're still a pretty young organization in the scheme of things. And but everything that we do and everything that we feel we can do is seen and done through the lens of music as a method. Yeah,
it's awesome. And, I'm really into music and into charity in South Florida, which is how we met. Sean Randolph, who works with me on my charity work, introduced me to you for this purpose. And I believe you're talking to him about, working with Make Change Trust.
We are actually, and we're actually really excited about that because one of the things we've been talking about as a team and conceptualizing for the last year or so was, could we take our Get in Tune program for at-risk youth, which is curriculum based, but it's pretty tight. It's a month module that we do with different partners like the Boys and Girls Clubs or the YMCAs. And we work with a set group of 10 or 12 or 15 teens for a month, once a week, and then we're done with it. So it's not as deep a dive as it could be in the world of what I would call these days emotional intelligence, which, by the way, is a topic matter that more and more school systems around the country are trying to implement in some shape or form, which is basically trying to teach living skills, coping skills to kids as something that's at least as valuable as learning algebra, if not more, So we've been wondering what it would look like to take our Get in Tune program and blow it up and expand it into a more broad, sweeping, music-based emotional intelligence program that we could partner on with Broward County schools. Mm-hmm. And so I believe
Sean and I are going to work on that with you.
Yeah, we're going to work on it with you guys, and we're really excited. And we've got someone who's worked with the schools a lot, who's already jumped on board to try to help us flesh this out programmatically. So we're going to see where it goes, but the potential to help such a wide swath of kids in a county that has a huge percentage of kids living below the poverty line, which generally means they don't have great family infrastructure as well, is really inspiring. We're excited for the opportunity to even attempt it,
Yeah, super cool. So if you don't mind, you should post, any contact information you want, links to your sites, programs, social media, anything you want, you can paste on my wall. And I encourage people to add you to social media and follow you and help you like we want to do because it's such an awesome program. So I'm so grateful that you came and joined me today. And we have this video forever that everybody can share and view. And, it's been an awesome session with you and with Drew. And now we're going to do some live domain training. Is there anything else in particular you want to say before we sign out?
No, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to speak with you and talk to the people who follow you, Mike. Thanks for having me on. And so I should just post on your Facebook wall information?
Yep. Awesome. Yep. Go right ahead.
Very good. And
you can post it either on my wall or append it to this live stream or both.
Okay. And once this is available as kind of the recording, I'll reshare it in a couple of places, Facebook, LinkedIn, website, et cetera, of course. Thanks so much for having me. And keep up the good work. You're doing some really great stuff for the community. And I know you're a drummer. So one of these days we'll have to do the drum circle together.
Yeah. We're going to do that soon. Yeah, and we really appreciate what you do in the community. And we're going to add you on the live stream again in a few months. And I'm going to talk to you again soon offline.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me, Mike. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, sir. You too. Okay, so we're going to do some live domain appraisal training. I'm so blessed that I had two great guests again. It's been awesome. It's going to be saved on YouTube. I don't know if Drew's going to come back to help me with the domain appraisal training, but he should. So you guys didn't add very many, but I have my own list, so it doesn't really matter. But you added a couple of domains that aren't very good, so I'm not appraising them. Here's a good one, Otar. Thank you for saving me. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to do a Google research to do the domain appraisal, keeping in mind that a real domain appraisal takes more time, and I have a whole bunch of tools. Since you don't have those tools, I'm going to teach you how to do it with just one tool, Google. So just give me one sec here, and we're going to roll. Okay, so there we have it. So we're going to research gemsellers.com, which is a great expression. First thing we do is disambiguate it. We always use Boolean for Google since they're not giving us good results. We're trying to narrow it down to the best of our ability. So I put it in quotes. And again, Google's giving me the wrong answer. It's not 71 results because we know that's too good of a word. So I think they're doing it to throw me off in case I'm a bot or something. But the correct answer is you go down to the bottom to find the right thing. And there's this tiny little thing here which proves that Google's a crappy app because they're hiding us. The actual correct results are in this tiny link at the bottom that nobody knows how to find. So it's kind of stupid. And so the correct answer is 710 results, which is actually pretty low. You can see this one's been used not just as an expression, but as a domain name. And it's actually just a domain name for sale. So you can see there was never really a real corporation on top of it. So the process we're going through here is we're going to disambiguate it. What does it mean? And we're going to look at the breadth, how many companies might need it, and then the depth, who needs it the most and how much might they pay for it, to establish a fair market value. And then if somebody's actually making you an offer, you might discount it because you want the money, which is what most people do. But we set a fair market value, the true price, the true value, and then we take what we take. Everybody has their own tolerance for that. I usually go down like 15% if I have to. So we know what it means. It's somebody who sells gems, potentially a jeweler. There's 1,000 other ways of saying jewelers, jewelry sellers, jewelry dealers, gem dealers, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of thesaurus expressions that I hadn't considered yet, but if I had enough time, I would figure out all the alternatives. The more alternatives there are, the lower the value of this guy is. So the breadth, though, is almost any gem dealer and seller in the world. So I'm surprised there's not additional results here. But it's just not a popular expression. It sounds like one. Government e-marketplace is what this is. Gem, but that makes no sense. Gem sellers. This is the one right here, Gem Sellers Association. So we'd like, there's a Facebook site. I don't know if you can see this on my screen or not, but only 6 people like it. So it looks lame. So we're going to appraise this guy. The breadth is, it should be broad, but it's not as broad as one would think. The depth is, there's only 1 or 2 people that look like they would want it. So even though it sounds like a really cool name, which I'm going to give a premium for sounding cool and being short and almost a dictionary word practically, it's a market space. Selling gems is a space in the economy. So it has some meaning, but it doesn't have a lot of action in Google. Again, I have a lot of other tools that I could deconstruct it with, but we don't have time to do that. And you don't have those tools, so it doesn't matter. So with respect to appraising this guy, it's a really good name, but it doesn't have a lot of activity. So I think it's worth like $10,000. But I would take less just because there's not a lot of there's not a lot of demand for it. Okay, I'll see what else you guys have. And if it's no good, I'm going to go to my other list. Okay, Otar looks like he always has the best ones. Alistair, stock mentorship, not too bad. Tampa lenders. Come on, you guys can do better than that. Okay, so I'll pick one or two off of here and then I'll go to my own list. Don't give me these crappy ones because it's just cluttering up my wall. Crime advocate, that's a decent name. We know what it means. Actually, we don't know what it means really. They advocate for crime or against it. Who advocates crime? I guess I can tell you who advocates for crime. Oh, this has an advocate for crime victims. So it makes no sense. Disambiguating it makes no sense. Nobody's a crime advocate. Well, let's see. Is anybody a crime advocate? Nobody's a crime advocate. Well, wait a sec. Let's see here. Is anybody a crime advocate? Is anybody that stupid? Sure enough, there's really stupid people in the world. They advocate for crime. So in any case, disambiguating this guy, crime advocate doesn't make a lot of sense, actually. It makes no sense. And so therefore, the breadth is very few people and very few depth. However, you know, people could conceptually use it and confuse it for a crime victim advocate, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I like the names to be perfect and within context. So while it sounds cool, it makes no sense. So sounding cool isn't good enough. It's easy to spell, easy to say. It sounds cool. It sounds like it should mean something, but it really doesn't. Crimeadvocate.com, $500. Let's see if there's any others, or I'll grab a few from my list. Bail set. Cultivating.com. There's a good one. Thank you, Ryder. Cultivating.com we're going to do. Guys, give me great ones. Great ones are the only ones worth appraising. It's not good use of time to do crappy ones. Okay, so cultivating. So we know what it means. It's actually an active expression, a verb, I guess. But the problem is there's cultivate, cultivation, growing, growth, and 1,000 other thesauruses, metaphors. But it's still a great name. It's easy to spell, easy to say. It means something. It's in the dictionary. But you know, it's imperfect for the reasons I described. So what we know what it means. Oh, maybe it means something extra with respect to the weed industry. Farmer charged for allegedly cultivating marijuana. Doesn't sound very enticing. This guy's, I don't know what he's doing. He's been smoking the marijuana apparently. Huh. This dude. So let's see here. That looks pretty popular. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe it's about marijuana. And Drew's actually the expert on these type of domain names. He has the best collection in the world that he just mentioned to us. So as far as what it's worth, though, I guess that we're doing what it means. We know the breadth is anybody cultivating anything. The depth, however, though, it looks like the marijuana industry would be the highest payers. So we're going to focus on what the value would be to them if they're the potential buyers. And that's a growing industry, particularly with the liberals in office. There's going to be marijuana everywhere, as if there wasn't already. I don't know that makes the word cultivating that exciting, but so regardless, the breadth is anybody growing stuff. The depth is it's not the best domain in the world. Somebody might want it or need it pretty bad. It's a dictionary word. So there's a lot of value there. It's hard to appraise it. Okay, let's see if you guys have anything else here. I'll do a couple more and let you guys get about your day. Ryder has Bindle.com. We have Kosher Approved. That doesn't sound very exciting. RevenueFromHome.com. That actually is a very long name, but it sounds good considering quarantine and COVID. You guys put a bunch of crappy domains on there, so you should appraise them yourselves. Appraise them at 0 and delete them. Follow the process I just showed you so you know how to appraise them. So as far as cluttering my wall, we're going to go to RevenueFromHome.com from Alistair. But again, that's a particularly growing area, revenue from home. The problem is it's long, it's 3 words: money from home, cash from home, job from home job, home cash, home revenue, at home revenue, COVID revenue. There's like a billion ways of rephrasing this one, which significantly diminishes its market value. So we know what it means, and it's good timing. It's trending in some respects. The breadth is everybody in the world could be in, I don't know, sell, let's just look at it like multi-level marketing or third-party marketing, different sorts of services that need resellers, revenue from home. You can make revenue from home, sign up for my reseller program, affiliate program, things of this nature. And so we're just looking at the images, but we don't see it as the name of any companies, a specific brand name. It's not on the side of a truck. It's not a logo, slogan, corporate name, proper brand name. It means something. There's a lot of other ways to say it. It is easy to say and spell. And it's particularly meaningful right now. And it actually sounds, you just have to use your own personal opinion and just say, does this thing sound cool? So yes, it sounds cool. It should add some value in that respect. It's your subjective review of it. And so here we get the real number. So again, the problem here is that Google showed us the wrong number and you had to know where to look. Google showed us 89 results, which again, you'll never figure this out unless, first of all, you have to put it in Boolean, or else Google's going to give you horrible results. And secondly, you have to have to click down at this little thing. So that's why you need this training, because otherwise you're not going to know how to even use Google. So anyway, revenue from home has a ton of hits here, 7.5 million. So it turns out it's a great name, but again, it's not the name of a corporation at the moment. It should be one. So revenue at home is a cool name. Congrats, Jen. And that is Alistair's name. Jen just sold another name she posted about. So again, the breadth is it's pretty broad, and the depth is it's pretty deep because it's such a cool name, but it's a very long name. So we're going to have to discount it down a lot and take into account that too many other ways of saying it. So I'm going to have to discount the hell out of it, even though it sounds really cool, but $4,000. It's too long of a name to sell it for anymore, but it would be a great investment for $4,000 for the buyer. All these are great investments. That's the object here, is great investments to build cool stuff. So I'll do 2 more and you guys are off the hook because this thing is running very long, which I appreciate. We have so many cool things going on. Well, I'm going to have to do my list, I think, because you guys posted a bunch of garbage on there. Okay, I'm going to do my list. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull 2 domains off of here, and we're going to do an appraisal. Okay, so let me get back to my trusty little Google here, or untrusty in this case. Okay, first thing I'm gonna try is one on this list. I'm gonna do rent automatic. So this would be related to, renting a electric vehicle. So it's a new idea, another trending idea. We know what it means, but there's too many other ways to say it. So we're sort of finding the same thing across all these domains. People are doing a smart thing and buying domains for cheap that sound really cool. And that's a smart thing because all the appraisals I posted are actually worth more than the people invested in the domain. Some domains might be worth 500, some might be worth 5,000, but I'd say in almost every case, it's greater than the person paid for it. I didn't ask the people what they paid for it, but there's another example of, cool name that probably didn't cost very much that might be worth a few thousand. And we're sort of seeing all the names today follow that same pattern where they're worth a few $1,000s. So we know what it means. It's not perfect because there's too many ways of saying it. Automatic rental car, on and on and on. The breadth is anybody who's in the car industry, in the car rental industry, for example, or a domain name or marketing speculator. The depth isn't very deep just because there's too many other ways of saying it. So again, we're just back to that same situation. So rent automatic.com is worth about $5,000. I'm gonna do one more and let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining me. And thanks to my guests, Jeff and Drew did a fabulous job. We're gonna save this recording that you can watch and share later. I'll post it in a couple hours. So what else am I gonna do here? I'm gonna do one more that hopefully sounds pretty cool. houseoffame.com. So again, what does it mean? I don't know what it means. House of Fame. It's like a museum for artists or something of fame, famous people. House of Fame, Chasseur, casting agency, dance. You can see this pull down is actually relatively helpful. Tells us a little context for the expression. But it's 3 words. It might mean something, but it doesn't mean something in 1 second necessarily. You don't necessarily know what it's referring to, although it is cool. And as we do the research, we see it means something. So what it means is, I don't know, a house of fame. Maybe the house itself is famous. Maybe the people are famous. Dance Academy. So the good news is people are using it in branding in multiple places. House of Fame, EDM record studio. This is the .net. So this is actually the most likely buyer probably. The owner of the .net. It's a crappy little site for some kid who's a DJ, but so you got houseoffame.net for $10. I would have got something.com, houseoffamedj.com. He could have got for $10 also, just adding 2 extra letters. So we sort of know what it means. The breadth is pretty good. There's a lot of stuff we see here, a whole bunch of stuff. That's the good news. And the depth is, this brand, you can see 100 different ways people are using it over and over and over. The perfect exact word, the same expression. Casting agency since 1993. Again, on and on and on. Books, agencies. I'd like to do more research, but we're rushing here. So again, House of Fame doesn't sound that great until you do the research. Once you do the research, it sounds fabulous. The depth is huge because there's so many competitors. And here we go. There's this is 14 million hits in Google. It's a poem that I guess is the first reference to it. And then people repurposed it and rebranded it on other spaces. And I have the domain. Thank goodness. So House of Fame is the winner, which just makes sense since it's mine. There's 2 F's there in a row, which is bad. People might mistype it. And it looks kind of weird when you read it. So I would take money away from the appraisal. It's a little long, but we just saw 100 different companies use that exact same expression. So the answer is it's worth $50,000 any day of the week. And if you give me 40, you can have it today. And if you offer me 30, I don't think I'll take it because it's too cheap. So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for another fabulous afternoon meeting cool people and praising domain names. You guys are the best. I really appreciate everything. And I'm going to see you next week because I already have my awesome guests lined up. I'm going to post about it in a couple minutes. I'm going to post the video to this YouTube. And I'll see you guys next week and see you on social media. Thank you so much.